Hello. Welcome to another lesson of Diego Professional Teaching. Today we're going to work on the past simple. In this lesson, I want to reinforce certain aspects related to the formulation. I'm going to explain when to use this, but the main idea that I want to focus is on the most common mistakes students make. The idea is to prevent this from happening, and with this video, I hope this is possible. Okay, if you're ready, let's get started.
As I was saying, we're going to talk today about past actions or past situations. This is what we call the past simple in grammar, but the use is for talking about past actions or past situations. Okay, let's start with that. Here I got as a title a comparison between the present and the past so we can understand what we're talking about. Okay, I'm giving very simple and very basic examples in order to understand the idea, and then I'm going to go little by little to increase the level in order to understand this better. Yeah, so first I'm making a comparison of lines in the present and another line in the past. I'm a teacher, I was a student. Present, past. I'm good, I was sick. My wife is in my house, she was in her job. We're at home, we were out. I'm using in this case just the verb to be, was or were, just to introduce this topic. Okay? Now we're going to introduce a little bit more in detail how to use these verbs. Sometimes they are confusing, so I want to give you the best possible explanation in order to understand it. Well, as I was saying, the verb to be has three uses when we talk about the language. We're referring to noun, adjective, and location. For example, I'm using I was or I wasn't a student. I'm talking about the present and the past. They were or they weren't my students. Still talking about the past. Adjective, I was tired or I wasn't tired. They were or they weren't very young. I'm using was and were so you can remember how to use them. And the last one is location. I wasn't in the bank or I was in the bank and they weren't or they were in a university. I'm giving here examples in the affirmative and negative form using was and using were, using nouns, adjectives, and locations. As you can see, I'm not using other verbs. Okay, so one more thing to make clear is that when we use the verb to be in the present or in the past, we don't use other verbs with them. Just nouns, adjectives, or place, if you want to call it location too. Right? I hope this part is clear for you. In this moment, we're going to talk about verbs when we refer to actions or states. This is different from what we just saw, which is verb to be, was, and were. In this case, we're going to use the other group of verbs. Okay. Now we're getting to verbs, and in this case, they are divided in two groups, which are regular and irregular verbs. To remember, regular verbs are the ones that have a rule that finish in ed, and in some cases in ied. Okay. The other group of verbs is irregular verbs. What happens with these verbs? They don't follow a rule, so there's no rule for them. What we have to do to know them or to learn about them is to memorize. That's the only thing. That's why I put here only memory. You can learn them only by memory. Okay. I'm giving here some examples of how to use this. Call, called with ed. Talked, talked with ed. That's how they work. They follow a rule. However, irregular verbs, if you see here, I have go and the past is went. So it's totally different. So what you have to do is just learn by memory. Okay, that's the only way to do it. Have, had. So there is not exactly a rule, they don't follow a pattern or anything. There are some specific groups that have some similarities, but still, you just have to work with them by memory. Okay? Here we have some examples. And the first one is Carla finished her homework on time. Marcos and Pablo went to the hospital, and Sofia swam all the morning. In this case, as you notice, the verbs have changed. Ed, the verb go changes for went, and Sofia is another regular verb. The past of swim is swam. Okay, as you see, the verb changes in every sentence. Now, how about the negative sentences? Here, we have a similarity. If it's regular or irregular, it is not important. what happens here? We include the auxiliary didn't and we put the verb in present. Some people say the infinitive, the base form, whatever other names, but I just put it in present in order to make you remember. So you remember and you don't have to start thinking about terminology. Okay? So for example, I put here didn't go or didn't study. If you notice, I put didn't and the verb goes back to the present. No, didn't went. Okay? Or no, didn't studied with IED. So as you see, the verb returns to be in the present form. Okay, I think it's clear. I hope so. Here we have examples. In this case, you see, using the same examples I was working in the affirmative sentences, I am using them now in the negative form. Carla didn't finish. You see, didn't and finish goes to the present form. Carlos and Pablo didn't go. It was went, now it returns to go. And Sophia didn't swim. The past was swam, now it returns to the present swim. Okay, so didn't and the verb in the present form. Please remember this because I have noticed that many students have this problem. Keep this in mind. Didn't and the verb in the present form. Okay? Regarding questions, the rule is almost the same. In this case, we don't use didn't, we just use did. We use the person and we use the verb again in the present form. For example, we have here, did he go? Did she study? Did we finish? Did you understand? Okay, I'm not using the verb in the past. I'm using the verb in the present form. Okay, I hope this part is clear. No matter whether it's irregular or regular, no problem, nothing changes in this case. Okay, now we have the same examples for the affirmative, for the negative. Now we're going to use them in the question form. Did Carla finish her homework on time? Did Marcos and Pablo go to the hospital? And finally, did Sofia swim all the morning? As you see, we maintain the structure. Did, person, verb. Did, person, verb. In this case, maybe we have Marcos and Pablo. Okay, but this is how it works. This is the structure, not necessarily to do the same. I just want you to remember how to structure the sentence. Okay, and did Sofia swim? Did the person and swim. Okay, don't take it literally. I mean the person because it is the subject, just to make it clear. Finally, we're going to go through some mistakes that I have always noticed in my career as a teacher and that I continue seeing. So I think it's important to point this out in order to prevent them. The first example is this is a very common one when you see you use the verb to be and you don't use did. For example, where you study for the exam. This is so common. I always tell my students, please don't confuse the verb to be with verbs. We use did when we refer to verbs. So what I usually have to correct is this. Where you study for exam. No, it's not where you study, it's did you study. So I changed the where and I put it for did. The second one is she didn't study. They put the auxiliary and they forget to change the verb into the present form. And that's something that also happens very often. So please remember these two mistakes because they are very common and I don't want you to repeat them. Now we have another pair of sentences which are mistakes and I want you to prevent. For example, I wasn't go to the bank yesterday. Again, the confusion between the verb to be and the verb. As you know, they cannot go together, so I have to change the wasn't for a didn't. And I didn't can arrive on time. In this case, it's not uh, a mistake that we can say, no, the student didn't study. No, it's following the rule. But there's a little bit of a thing here. Can is a modal verb, and the past for can is could. Here I put an asterisk, as you will see. The past of can is could. Can is a modal verb, and it works differently. Exactly, it doesn't follow the rules of common verbs, which is didn't and the verb in present. Can, when we make it in negative, is cannot or can't. In the past, can is could, and the negative form for could is only could. The same way as can is for the present, could is for the past. Okay, so this is very important to remember. Please try to check it out one more time, at least this part, because I imagine it must be confusing. But I hope that if you watch it again, you will understand it. Okay? Well, this is it. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you liked this video. As I said, the purpose is to focus on specific mistakes in order to prevent them, in order to help you solve them, and to communicate better. The idea is to communicate better, to use a language for a purpose. Okay? This is it. Have a nice day and see you in our next video. Bye for now.